The room spun when I saw it. My parents were smiling. My brother, Ethan, sat at the head of the dinner table, beaming, holding a hardcover book with my recipes printed in glossy ink. Surprise. My mom said. Ethan's cookbook is officially published today. My college fund. My years of saving, scholarships, summer jobs. Gone. They'd spent every cent to make him a star. With my work. I stared at the title, Flavors of the Heart, by Ethan Cole. Every dish, every note, every story in that book was mine. I couldn't breathe. When I opened my mouth, my father's hand went up like a stop sign. Don't ruin his moment, Claire. My name is Claire. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? Like your existence is just a resource to be drained for someone else's glory? I watched Ethan bask in the spotlight, smiling as if he had slaved over those recipes for years. The bloggers at the table clapped. Cameras flashed. My parents glowed with pride. Inside me, something cracked, quiet, but final. I didn't say a word that night. I just smiled. Smiled so hard my jaw ached. Because I knew something they didn't. When the applause faded, I still had the laptop. I still had the files, and before this was over, the world would know exactly who the real chef was. The night after the dinner, I locked my bedroom door and opened my laptop. Hundreds of recipe drafts. Photos of meals. Notes scribbled at 2 a.m. with grease still on my fingers. Years of labor, and all of it, word for word, copied into Ethan's book. Scrolling through the digital pages of his so-called masterpiece felt like reading my own diary. But with someone else's name scribbled over mine. I couldn't cry. I was past tears. My body hummed with something colder. Resolved. I set up a private folder, labeling every document with timestamps, metadata, proof. Screenshots of email drafts where I'd sent recipes to myself. Photographs with dates burned into the corner. Even video clips where my own voice explained techniques. Receipts of my parents transferring the last of my $42,000 college fund into Ethan's publishing deal. It was all here. A digital arsenal, but revenge wasn't just about evidence. It had to hurt. It had to burn. That's when I found the bloggers' emails, tucked into my father's sent folder. They were sending invites to Ethan's exclusive recipe demonstration at a downtown food festival. Perfect. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one. When Ethan stood on stage, knives flashing and cameras rolling, he wouldn't be the only one holding the spotlight. I would be there too, ready to cut deeper than any blade he held in his hands. The food festival smelled like roasted garlic, caramelized onions, and betrayal. Booths lined the streets, chefs shouting over sizzling pans. In the center stood Ethan. My parents hovered close, glowing with pride as he prepared for his big reveal. He wore a white chef's coat my mother had tailored, sleeves rolled up like he had earned grease stains on his arms. I melted into the crowd. Hoodie pulled low, laptop snug in my backpack. Every nerve in my body buzzed. The host introduced him. Let's welcome Ethan Cole, the young chef whose debut cookbook is taking the food world by storm. The crowd cheered. Ethan smirked, holding up my book, his book. He began chopping vegetables with exaggerated flair, tossing words he barely understood. This dish is about balance, about patience. Every line he spoke, I remembered whispering into my recipe journal at midnight, alone in our dim kitchen. I clicked my laptop open. Wi-Fi connected. A live stream waiting. My fingers hovered. One tap, and the truth would be everywhere, but my heart stuttered. Would they believe me? Or would I look like the bitter sister, desperate for scraps of attention? Then I saw her. A girl in the front row, clutching a copy of the cookbook, eyes wide with admiration. She believed him. She thought he was a genius, and that was my breaking point. I pressed the key. On the jumbo screen behind Ethan, his cookbook cover blinked away, replaced by a folder titled, Claire Cole, the Real Chef. Photos, videos, drafts, dates. My hands plating the dishes Ethan claimed. My voice explaining sauces. The crowd went silent. Ethan froze, knife trembling midair, and then, one person began to clap. The sound spread, hesitant, then building. Not applause for Ethan. For me. The bloggers leaned forward, cameras swiveling toward the screen. This is her work, one murmured, recognition dawning. Ethan's face drained of color. My parents' smiles collapsed into stone. I stepped from the crowd. Hood down. Eyes locked on him. Tell them, Ethan, I said, voice steady. Tell them whose words you printed. He stammered. Laughed nervously. She's confused. These were collaborations, family projects, but my laptop betrayed him faster than his tongue. Emails appeared on screen, my mother's signature authorizing the publisher's transfer. My father instructing Ethan to stick to the story if Claire asks. Gasps rippled through the crowd. You stole from me, I said. You took my future and dressed it in your name. Silence. Only the sizzle of forgotten food on the stove behind him. I turned to the audience. I am Claire Cole. And these recipes, they're my blood, my nights, my years. I cooked them when no one else believed in me. I am the real chef. The crowd erupted. Some booed. Others cheered. But every camera lens found me. Ethan dropped the knife. My mother whispered his name like a prayer gone wrong. I thought that moment would feel like victory. But standing there, all I felt was hollow, because exposing them was only the beginning. That night, I didn't sleep. My phone exploded with messages, journalists, bloggers, food critics. Some wanted interviews. Others wanted to confirm the evidence. Ethan's name trended, but not with praise. Headlines spun like wildfire. Rising chef exposed as fraud. Sister claims recipes stolen for $42,000 cookbook deal. But inside our house, silence ruled. The air was thick when I walked into the kitchen. My mother sat at the counter, her nails tapping against a coffee mug. My father leaned in the doorway, arms crossed. Ethan sat slumped, scrolling through hate comments on his phone, eyes red from hours of shame. You humiliated this family, my father said finally. His voice wasn't anger, it was disappointment, which somehow cut deeper. I laughed, sharp and bitter. I humiliated us? Or did you, when you stole my education and handed it to Ethan wrapped in ribbon? Mom's lip trembled. We only wanted him to have a chance. Cooking was just your hobby, Claire. You're smart. You'd find another way. A hobby. That word was a dagger. Every burned scar on my hand, every all-nighter spent testing dough, every moment of pouring myself into flavor, and to them, it was a hobby. Ethan muttered, you ruined me. I turned, ice in my chest. No, Ethan. You ruined yourself when you put your name on my soul. The fight ended there, but something new sparked in me. They thought this was about humiliation. About internet shame. But humiliation fades. I didn't want them just embarrassed. I wanted them stripped. Exposed. Left with nothing, like they left me. So when the email came 2 days later from the New York Culinary Review inviting me to guest write an article, I knew exactly how I'd use it. The world didn't just need to know Ethan was a fraud. They needed to know my parents were the architects of it, and for that, I would give them a feast of truth they could choke on. The article dropped on a Wednesday morning. Title: The Cost of a Stolen Recipe, A Daughter's Story. I had written it like a confession. Like tearing open a wound and pressing the blood onto the page so the world could see it for what it was. No polish. No padding. Just raw truth. I wrote about the nights I cooked while the world slept. The tiny kitchen where I learned patience by listening to onions caramelize at 3 a.m. The way grease burns mapped constellations on my forearms, tiny stars nobody noticed but me. I described the notebook I carried since I was 15. Its spine cracked, pages stained with olive oil and soy sauce, filled with scribbles about sauces, soups, secrets of flavor that had been my salvation. Then I told them about the theft. The money. $42,000 scraped from years of scholarship awards, part-time shifts, tips I tucked away dollar by dollar. Gone in one quiet wire transfer to a vanity publisher. I described the betrayal at the dinner table. My father's hand slicing the air to silence me. The way my mother smiled like she'd won the lottery while my brother soaked in praise for words and recipes that had never passed his lips. I didn't just reveal Ethan. I revealed them. By noon. The article had gone viral. Chefs reposted it with captions like, "This is what resilience looks like." Culinary students wrote to me, telling me they saw themselves in my words, that they too cooked in silence while their families mocked their dreams. And the sponsors came, pouring into my inbox. Real sponsors. Real brands. Asking if I would consider collaborations, partnerships, even cooking classes, but inside our house, it was war. Why couldn't you keep this in the family? Mom asked me. Her voice trembled, but not from shame, only from fear of exposure. She clutched the newspaper like it was a death notice, the black ink bleeding into her fingertips. "Because you never kept me in the family," I whispered. Ethan exploded then. He screamed until his voice cracked, until his face went blotchy red. He called me jealous, pathetic, ungrateful. His insults slid off me like rain on steel. Dad tried to bargain. Always the deal maker, always the fixer. He leaned against the counter and said, "If you take the story down, Claire, I'll help you rebuild. I'll pay for another semester somewhere else." I laughed, sharp and joyless. "You already sold my future once. You don't get to buy it back." But I wasn't stopping, because the invitations kept coming. Guest spots on local TV. Collabs with food bloggers who had millions of followers. Every platform Ethan once begged for was now knocking at my door, and every time I stepped onto a set, I didn't pretend. I didn't paste on a smile like my mother had trained me to do at family gatherings. I looked into the cameras and told the truth. I'm not here because my family believed in me. I'm here because they didn't. Each word was a nail in their coffin, and the more I rose, the more they fell. By the end of summer, Ethan was unrecognizable. The boy who once strutted through life with his chin high and a smirk curling his lips now shuffled in shadows. His eyes, once gleaming with smug certainty, were rimmed red and hollow, the skin beneath sagging with exhaustion. He used to speak loudly, command rooms with his fake confidence. Now he muttered, avoiding eye contact, shoulders curled in as though he were trying to fold himself into invisibility. The food world had chewed him up and spit him out. His name had become shorthand for fraud. "Pulling in Ethan" was the new slang for plagiarism in culinary circles. Every critic who once smiled at him now ridiculed him. The dream he stole had turned into a nightmare that would follow him for years, and my parents, God, my parents. They stopped showing up to church potlucks. They stopped attending neighborhood barbecues. People whispered too loudly when they passed. "That's the family who stole from their own daughter. That's the mother who spent her daughter's tuition to publish a lie." Reputation meant everything to them. Respect. Appearances. And now, those appearances were shredded. Dragged through the mud, left to rot. One evening, after filming a cooking segment for a local TV station, I came home to find the house heavy with silence. The kitchen smelled faintly of something burnt, like a meal abandoned halfway. Ethan's coat still hung on the hook by the door. But when I walked past his bedroom, the air was different, hollow. His drawers were open, emptied. The closet hung bare, only a lone hanger swinging like a pendulum. His trophies were gone, his posters stripped, his mattress bare. He had left no note. No explanation. Just absence. I found my mother at the dining table, staring down at her own trembling hands. My father sat in the corner, a glass of whiskey sweating in his grip. The ice melted to nothing. "You've destroyed us," my mother whispered. Her voice fragile as tissue paper. I stood in the doorway. My bag still slung over my shoulder, the makeup from filming still on my face. Their words should have gutted me. But instead, I felt a strange calm. "No," I said softly. "You destroyed me first. All I did was return the favor." The silence that followed was unbearable. My father's jaw twitched, like he wanted to lash out but couldn't find the words. My mother's eyes filled with tears that never fell. For a flicker of a moment, guilt stirred inside me. These were still my parents. They had raised me, given me life, provided food and shelter. A part of me, some small, stupid, broken part, still wanted to reach out, to forgive, to be forgiven. But then I remembered. The dinner table. The proud smirk on Ethan's face. My father's hand raised to silence me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. My mother's eyes glowing not with love, but with calculation, and the guilt burned away. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I wasn't Ethan's shadow. I was my own. That night, I packed my bags. Clothes, notebooks, my knives, the only possessions that mattered. I left the house without saying goodbye. I moved into a tiny studio apartment above a bakery downtown. The rent was steep, the ceilings low, the nights unbearably quiet. But the stove worked. The kitchen smelled of yeast and butter drifting up from below. And every time I turned on a burner, I felt whole. Cooking wasn't just survival anymore. It was reclamation. Weeks passed, and the world outside my small apartment kept pulling me forward. When the Culinary Review named me chef to watch 2025, I finally let myself breathe. For the first time in years, my chest expanded without the weight of bitterness crushing it, but something still lingered. Ethan's book, the glossy cover. His name printed in thick black ink. A monument to my stolen years. A wound that still existed, even if the world now knew the truth. Justice wasn't complete. Not until that book was reduced to nothing, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The bookstore smelled of paper and ink, the faint trace of coffee drifting from the cafe in the corner. My footsteps echoed across the tile as I made my way to the clearance section, and there they were, stacks of Ethan's cookbook, piled carelessly, their covers curling, the once shiny pages dulled by dust. Red stickers screamed $1.99. A book that had once been paraded as a triumph now rotted in the bargain bin. Unloved, unwanted. I stood there for a long time, staring at the name that had been stamped over my life. Ethan Cole. Black letters, bold and smug, sitting atop recipes born from my sleepless nights and scarred hands. One by one, I lifted the copies. 23 in total. They weighed heavy in my arms, heavier still in my chest. The cashier glanced at me strangely as I slid them onto the counter. You sure you want all of these? She asked. Yes, I said. My voice was calm, steady. Every single one. I carried them home like corpses. Up the creaking stairs of my studio. Past the bakery below, where the air was warm with sugar and butter. Into the alley behind my building, where the night air was sharp and the pavement was cracked. I stacked them carefully, deliberately. A monument turned funeral pyre. Pages fluttered in the breeze like broken wings, whispering lies one last time. I struck a match, the flame hissed, then roared. The first cover curled inward, the glossy paper blistering, blackening. Ethan's name turned brittle, flaking away letter by letter. The fire climbed higher, licking at the recipes I had once whispered to the dark, stealing from my own hunger to create beauty. Smoke rose into the night, carrying the ghost of betrayal with it. I stood there, the heat warming my skin, the flames dancing in my eyes. My heart beat steady, not with anger anymore, but with release. My story was no longer theirs to control. No longer a secret smothered under someone else's name. It was mine. The flames consumed faster than I expected. Years of my work, twisted and stolen, now surrendered to ash. The air smelled of ink and charred paper. A bittersweet perfume of destruction and rebirth. When the last page crumbled, I whispered into the smoke, not with bitterness, not with hate, but with clarity. You tried to bury me, but I was the seed. The wind carried my words away, scattering them into the night like sparks. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply turned, walking back toward the light of my apartment, my hands empty but my future full, and for the first time, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like peace.